Most definitely, Diabo. A very good afternoon again to you and the viewers there at home. We're coming to you live from Kempton Park. This is where the Social Development Department has gathered experts. It has gathered role players as well, and those that are active in the granting space to just take stock of where we are as a country in terms of the implementation of that basic income grant. I must say to you, Diabo, that we're moving a little bit closer as a country to the realization of that basic income grant. What is being presented here today is the second report looking into this matter. And you can remember that Section 27 of the country's constitution enshrines or gives the rights to just the country to ensure that there's social security for the vulnerable mostly. And you can remember that COVID-19 as well presented a dynamic in the country where a lot of people lost their jobs. And we saw indeed a lot of people depended on that social relief of distress grant that was introduced in the year 2020 to try close the gap. The expert report that is being presented here today kind of gives us an idea of where we are, the impact of this 350 social relief of distress grant, and if there's a need indeed to expand this grant and make it some sort of a permanent feature in the country where it will be introduced as a basic income grant. I'm going to bring into the conversation now the Acting Director General for the Department of Social Development, that being Mr. Lincoln Mkunu, who's joining us now to just let us in on what we are doing here today. We're seeing that comprehensive work has been done so far to ensure that there's social security in the country, especially looking at what people have been looking at towards the department over the introduction of that basic income grant. Let us in on where we are today and the release of this report here today.
No, thanks very much for the opportunity. I think you're quite right. We're shifting much closer to the realization of a basic income grant as a country. And I think the discourse has really shifted over the past few months and maybe years. Before, the discussion was, should we bring a basic income grant? And that was the first report that we launched last year in Cape Town in, I think it was December, if I'm not mistaken. But the discourse is now shifting to how best can we actually implement the grant. It's no longer should we, it's how best can we. And the report that we are launching here today really starts to look at the various options that are available in terms of bringing the grant into fruition. And I think a lot of questions have been asked. Can we afford it? Who will pay for it? Where will the money come from, etc.? And I think the report begins to unearth a number of those specific areas, in terms of the funding options that are available. But also, I think what I like about this particular report is that it begins to zoom into the specific provinces and really looks at the quantitative impact of the 350 grant in terms of what it's had. And we know, as a matter of principle, of fact, that it's not a lot of money. 350 grants, we heard earlier in the day that it's about 11 rands a day and really can't buy you much, especially with the current increase in food prices and so on. It becomes difficult. So we do advocate for a much higher increase, at least closer to the food poverty line. But I think that the report, what it really does is that it sheds some light on what options are available for us to start looking at as a country.
The issue of the feasibility of this process is something that came, comprehensively in terms of the release of this report, looking at the impact also on the economy as much as we are advocating for a basic income grant. Where are we in terms of taking into consideration an economy that has not done well for quite some time? Where is this money that we are advocating for in terms of just the introduction of a permanent feature, this basic income grant being a permanent feature? Where is this money going to come from?
So there are a number of options. I think one of the options that looks at the tax regime, looks at various taxes, personal income tax, it looks at value-added tax and a number of other options that are available. But it also looks at a number of other sort of proposals that have been tested in different places as well. What I like about this report is that it actually brings about evidence-based research. In other words, we've got a number of panel members who are professors at various universities that have come together and said, look, we'll draw in the research for you. We'd be able to pull some examples used in different parts of the world in terms of what they looked at. Some countries went to borrow money, some countries use the tax regime, and so on and so forth. So we're still exploring those, and part of what will come out of the report will then direct us in terms of the sort of approach that we will take forward.
Also wanted to find out from you in terms of just the missing middle. There's been talks of the missing middle here where this is concerned. The money is going to be redistributed from the wealthy in terms of making sure that we bring on board those that don't have. Just talk about the missing middle. Where does that leave the missing middle?
Yeah, look, I think there's some discussion around taxing the rich, of course, and those are conversations that we must have as well, and look at how best we can support those. Of course, what we're trying to do with the basic income grant is really to bridge the gap between the missing middle, and really to find better ways of ensuring that they have some level of income that will be able to sustain them. What we do know about the grant is that it doesn't shift much in terms of job creation. In fact, it doesn't do much in terms of job creation. But what it does do is have a serious impact on poverty and, to a large extent, inequality as well. So we do advocate for the economy to grow and so people can get into jobs as opposed to the grant. But in the event where the economy is not creating adequate jobs, we don't have a choice, but we have to provide some level of support to people so that we don't get them deeper into poverty.
We've heard here as well, Ntate Mkunu, around the issue of just the social relief of distress grant. There are recipients at home that are still waiting for that grant. They applied from as early as April already, but we're seeing that still to date is December, they've not received those grants. What have been the challenges and the stumbling blocks in more or less rolling out this SRD grant in a way that it will give us some sort of an assurance that when we roll out the basic income grant, when it comes into fruition, there won't be hurdles like this, where people are waiting from month to end without any response or without any monies into their account, where this granting process is concerned?
No, thanks. We are very conscious of the fact that there's some people who had not received their money. We did indicate that we had paid about 3 months late, and that was largely because of the processes that we needed to undertake. One of the reasons that we said to the National Treasury we want a longer extension is so that we are able to, at the end of the financial year, not have a challenge in terms of going to renegotiate for contracts. And those are some of the things that kind of delayed us. But also, I think we want a little bit more certainty in terms of the grant, in terms of longevity. Our view is that we should extend much longer, at least to a point where we get to a policy level, and this is what we're working on. What comes out of this report will go into a policy document which will be fed through the various government structures, and thereafter we will obviously then look at amending the legislation and then amend the regulations that will enable a basic income support grant. But I think we have availed opportunities for those who have not been able to receive their money to either contact our various call centers and engage with us so that we're able to assist. I know that we've been able to assist a number of people that people have brought through. In some cases, it's a verification process problem. In some cases, it's information that is not being input correctly. And in some cases, some of the data that we received in some cases is not real time. So we had to just make sure that we run that process through. But I think the appeals process also makes an opportunity available for those who have been disqualified to be able to get into the system and get some assistance in terms of where the errors may have been, in terms of the actual 350 grants. We are conscious of the challenges around the late start to that, and I think that we've met the backlog now. We were 3 months behind, and we've caught up in terms of all the people who had not been paid. But of course, as I indicated, there could be some errors that have been through the system, and we urge those colleagues at home who still don't have the grant to be able to link through our appeals process and call in and engage with us so we'll be able to assist them speedily.
And so just briefly, finally from my end, where to from here? This is the second report that has been released. There was one last year. Are we expecting to see another one next year? And really, when can we expect to see the basic income grant become a reality here at home? Because reports can always come and the studies can always be done, but people want to see action. They want to see things happening on the ground. When can we really expect to see some sort of movement here? Is this report going to see another report followed by another report? Where to from here?
No, thanks. So I think the main thing for us is that we're going to digest the inputs out of the report and then put it into a policy paper, which we've actually started. And I think that what's coming out of this report is going to help us beef up that policy paper. We then take it to Cabinet, and then we go out for public inputs. And thereafter, once we've received all the public inputs, we then amend the policy. We have a social assistance policy. We're going to amend that policy. And of course, the legislation process may take some time. We don't know how long exactly, but this is a major priority priority for us, and we want to get it done as soon as possible. So within the next 3 months or so, we're going to be taking the policy paper to Cabinet, and immediately after that go out for public input, and then come back and do the revisions, amend the regulations, and then we into fruition.
So thank you very much for your time. That is the Acting Director General from the Department of Social Development, Mr. Lincoln Gunu, who's coming through really to just give us an update, a breakdown on what the release of this report is all about, what it entails, and where to from here. You heard him saying that this is a priority of ensuring that there is social security for those people that are dependent on grants in the country, but looking also at the social relief of distress grants to say there's still a process underway of appeals for those that are indeed looking towards the Social Development Department to ensure that they get their monies and don't spend a bleak Christmas due to monies that are not coming in where these grants are concerned. Diabo?